You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one on one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical, tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1334. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. We want you to thrive. We want you to be on that side of knowing about marketing, knowing about business, all these different things. Like just this morning, I went and had coffee with a local therapist, and she's looking at growing into a group practice. She's full-time with community mental health and just thinking, I think it's time to probably take this little side gig practice and amp it up. And as we were talking in Michigan, she has an LLC, and you are required in Michigan to have a PLLC if you are professionally licensed. So these little things, these little tidbits that sometimes we just pick up along the way, we want to make sure you know those things, whether you're in Michigan or all across the whole country. So we do that in our communities. We do that on this podcast. We want you to have a thriving practice that's done right, but we also want you to love it. So often we think those are in opposition, that you can't do the work you love, the work you're passionate about, what you want to do, the impact you want to have on the world. That doesn't mean that you also have to not get paid for it. So there's a way that you can create your practice to have it thrive, but also that you love it. And so we cover this 3 to 5 days a week. We are doing this podcast. As you heard, we're, fastly approaching episode 1400. So we couldn't do that without our amazing guests, our amazing sponsors, all of you that listen, and all of you that are in our membership community, the Practice Academy. Well, today we have Dr. LaNail R. Plummer, who is a U.S. military veteran, licensed mental health clinician, educator, and the founder and CEO of Onyx Therapy Group, a mental health organization she launched in 2013 with nearly 2 decades working directly with clients and years teaching, supervising, and training other therapists. She works on culturally responsive care with a focus on serving Black women, the Black community, young women, and LGBTQ+ individuals. She's also the author of the book that launches today, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women, and a vocal advocate for mental health, equality, equity, social justice, and healing through identity-affirming therapy. Dr. Plummer, congrats today. Your book goes live. And those of you that are watching this as we're streaming, it actually goes live because we have this ahead of time on January 27th. So January 27th, when the podcast goes live, is the day the book goes live into the world. Congratulations, Dr. Plummer.
Yay! Thank you, Joe. I am so excited. I'm so excited about this book and what it could mean for our work, our work in counseling and mental health. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think that I remember how much work went into Thursday is the new Friday. And when that went live into the world, I think I did 200 podcast interviews in the months before, and they all dropped in the same week. And it's just like this thing you've worked so hard on, that you dreamt up for years. You've had all this experience. You do copy after copy, and then finally it launches into the world. Congratulations. Writing the book is only half of it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I'm working with my team, I'm learning more and more about that.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, if we can be, supportive, we would love to be.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about the Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women.
Yeah.
So I'm a white guy from Northern Michigan. There was one Black kid at my school. His dad was from Kenya and his mom was white. And I came from a very, very kind of monoculture, Catholic culture. And then I went to school in Kalamazoo. And Kalamazoo, Michigan is a very diverse community, halfway between Chicago and Detroit. And I didn't know what I didn't know. There was professors that would just say things, and and learning how it wasn't that individual's responsibility to teach me about working with people that were different from myself. And I've had to do a lot of my own learning. So, in jumping into this, I think there's just a general ignorance lots of us have, that we need to be brought up to speed. And I'm so excited about this book because I think it's going to really help us, in a lot of ways. But let's just start with the problems. What are the problems that happen, as people are doing counseling with Black women, that maybe the average therapist, that graduates doesn't even know is a problem, as we enter into the therapy world?
Yeah. There's so much there, Joe. And so I wrote the book. You used the word a second ago, like ignorance, and there's a point in the book where I use that word, and as I keep going back and reading the book, I play around with like, is that word offensive? Is it not offensive? And how are the readers gonna see themselves related to that word? But it is the true word, right? Like we just really don't know something, and we don't know what we don't know, like you mentioned. And so I wrote the book particularly because most of us that are in mental health came into the work because we are helpers. Like we want to be able to help. We see the good in people. We have the best intentions. We are confident in our education that we received in our graduate programs. And we really just want to be supportive and helping. But sometimes that ignorance, especially with marginalized communities, can actually be harmful, right? A client doesn't want to go into the session and have to educate their therapist about what it means to be them. And yes, of course, there's cultural humility where a therapist needs to be able to acknowledge that they don't know something, but to continue to ask the client to teach them about an experience or a nuance that is maybe a bit more general to their race and their gender, as opposed to what it means for them individually, becomes a disservice to the client. And what we know for Black women is that if they don't have a good experience with therapy, they don't necessarily find a new therapist. They just stop going to therapy. And then
Mm.
they tell their families that therapy wasn't important or helpful for them. And so then there's a generational impact, a personal impact, and then a generational impact if a Black woman has a non-helpful therapeutic experience. So I wrote the book because there's quite a few things that Black women experience that are not necessarily highlighted in our world. We still very much live in stereotypes on TV and in media, and so there's things that therapists are not paying attention to, like why a Black woman is so distraught and experiences so much grief when one of her friendships ends, right? And that has
Mm.
historical impact related to fictive relationships connected back to slavery, right? Like when people were
Mm.
when enslaved folks were separated from their families, they had to create new families with the other people that were on that plantation, and so it may not be their actual sister, but they call her a sister because that's the closest thing that she has, right? And so an end of that could be similar to a non-Black person losing their actual biological sister. And so there's things like that that have to be addressed because there's historical connections, not just to our history with enslavement, but also all of the generations after and what we're currently experiencing now. So, for instance, there's over 300,000 Black women that have been pushed out of the workplace in this last year. What does that mean for a Black woman who has chosen a non traditional life, has decided not to marry or have children, and has made her job her legacy? What does it mean for her when she, in particular, is pushed out, right? And so there's all those types of like nuances that were not covered in our graduate courses, right? Our multicultural course did the best that it could, and yet it became very stereotyped and generalized, and oftentimes feeds into what we see maybe in media that's not a true reflection of who these Black women are.
Yeah. How do we hold the nuance, as well as find the generalities of counseling Black women? Like, what do you think are things that therapists should know? Like, in general, this tends to be true, and in this situation, the person's a person, and it's not always going to be true. Like, what are some of those things?
Yeah, so part one of the book really talks about the history of being a Black woman. So I divided first into the historical experiences around race. Does it mean to be Black? And there's some very generalized experiences there. And then what does it mean to be a woman, right? So not necessarily a Black woman, but just a woman in general, and thinking about the impact of the patriarchy on the development of a woman, the socialization of a woman. And then I go into the intersections. And so part one has a lot of the general experiences. But what I love about the book, and I know people are like, of course you should love the book. You wrote the book, right? But what I love about the book is that it allows for a therapist to individualize some of the topics based off of a few things. So in the book, as a guide, because it's a guidebook, I do have therapist tips. So these are tips that therapists need to be considering as they're working around a particular topic with their client. And that allows a general experience to be more individualized. I also have catalyst questions. And so a lot of times we come into space, we get all the good information, but we don't know how to enter and broach the topic with a client. And so the catalyst questions really help to make that generalized experience a bit more specific for that client. There's journal prompts in there. And then what I really enjoy about the book is that at the end of each chapter, there's therapist introspection, where each therapist can do some of their own reflection and introspection about what they experienced as they were reading that chapter. Particularly, Joe, because we all have biases, right? And in graduate school, we're often taught to avoid these biases. And we know as therapists that when you avoid something, it just gets bigger in another area of your life. And so it's better to just lean in and acknowledge these biases and to acknowledge these stereotypes, to do the reflection and the introspection to see where they came from and how they were developed, and then to make a plan of how we're going to address it afterwards. And because the book is so niche, there's going to be people who are going to have to address their biases, right? And all of that is written into the book in a way that the therapist who's reading it feels very supported, and know that my goal is to educate and to guide, as opposed to making us feel bad about maybe mistakes that we've made with previous clients, or even the ways that we've thought about Black women based off of how we've been socialized.
Yeah. Dr. Plummer, when you think about an intake, just the intake process, so someone reaching out, the intake paperwork, the first session, what do most therapists either get wrong or miss out on asking in that process that would help them be more effective with counseling Black women?
Yeah, I think it's two different perspectives. So sometimes Black women can be very closed off, and so they don't give all of the best information or all of their fullness of the information in intake. Part of that is from a generalized racial experience, what we often refer to as like not airing out our dirty laundry, right? Particularly because in the past, when Black folks have been honest and transparent with other folks that are not necessarily Black, there's been consequences to that, right? There may be consequences of a family being divided. There may be consequences of losing a job. There may be consequences of being mischaracterized or classified, and then subsequently one having to dig themselves out of a ditch based off of one thing that they said. And so what happens in the intake is not the full picture of what the client is. And I get worried sometimes that therapists start diagnosing just off of intake, and nobody else in healthcare does that, right? Like our dentist doesn't tell us you have this root canal, you must have a root canal because you have this infection, without doing x-rays, right? Like we're the only ones who go in and try to diagnose so quickly. And so I think one of the first mistakes is that understanding that sometimes Black folks are not going to give all of the information immediately. The second piece is that we Black folks have this history of being storytellers, right? And so asking one question, sometimes counselors and therapists come in and they have like 5 pages of intake, which is perfectly fine. At Onyx, we have a long intake as well. But one of the things that we do is that we allow that intake to happen over several sessions so that the client can expound upon things as they feel necessary. Because remember, some may be closed off and some may want to give stories and context in that regard. So not rushing a person by the time they decide that they're ready for therapy, letting them tell you what things are. And I said it was only two, but maybe there's a third in that some of the language that we use in therapy is not necessarily the language that's commonly used in the Black community. And so asking somebody, does your family have a history of psychological or mental health issues is such a general statement as opposed to, were there members of your family who didn't operate in the same ways that other people did? Were there people in your family who stood out a little bit more and they were conversations at the dinner table or conversations in the house? Like what, because that kind of information is going to let us know if we have a family member who had a mental health issue but we never called it major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder. So I think putting it into more context is best as opposed to always using our psychological jargon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there questions on the intake that you think should always be on intakes?
Yeah. I mean, I own Onyx, right? So all my questions are gonna stay on there. But I think that we get some of the best, we get some of the most robust answers from our clients when we ask about their spiritual practices as opposed to their religion. Because again, Black folks have interesting relationships with our religion, and that I talk about that in the book also. Many of us identify as Christians, but remember that Christianity was not an original religion for Black folks. It was one that often was placed upon us in enslavement. And so there's an interesting relationship there. So spirituality tends to be a better answer than religion. And then also there's social connections because that helps us know where their support systems are, but also where there's rifts. And that connects back to attachment theory. So we will always ask questions around, of course, general demographics and what their presenting issue is, what they believe their presenting issue is, but we're going to always ask about spirituality. And that's supported in counseling by a cervic, right? Like a lot of counselors forget that we have an entire organization that is specializing in spirituality for counselors and clients. And then the other one is going to be those social connections. So where do you get your support, and being okay with the fact that some of the clients are not going to get their support from their biological family for a number of reasons, especially if they're trying to break generational cycles, or if they've moved from their place of origin and creating a new life for themselves.
Mm. Now, if we're moving past the intake, what would you say are some of the kind of ongoing therapy things that should be in the toolbox for every therapist as they're counseling Black women?
Yeah, of course I'm gonna say the book, right? Like
Your book.
that has
I mean,
to be
right
there.
next to
I
you.
have it here. And you see I have a bookmark because I'm still reading the book, rereading the book, and
Yeah.
enjoying it. But I think it
Well, and I just as a side note, I always love when there's books like yours to just like have little tabs for specific things
yeah,
to reference quickly in sessions. And
yeah,
so, whether that's a little post-it note or whatever, just to like quickly do it. I have that for my own advanced copy for when I was doing podcasts. Like people would ask me a question, I'm like, I wrote that 18 months ago. Like I don't remember. It's like I gotta quickly find it in the book. So I always tab books like that, especially when I was in sessions.
yeah. And Joe, if I could veer from the original question just for a second,
Please do.
um, one of the things about the book is that part one should absolutely be read because that is where we have the historical experiences, and I even say explicitly that history is hard for us because we didn't create what the dynamic is that we live in now. Like you mentioned, you're a white guy from the Midwest, and I'm a Black girl from the East, or I live in the East now, but the dynamics that we experience if we were in the same room, we didn't necessarily create, right? Like we are the recipients of what our elders and ancestors created. And so that part is sometimes going to be difficult, I think, for people to read, just based off of how race and gender has been internalized in the country. But this book is special because as you mentioned, tagging certain things. The book is not supposed to be read from the beginning to the end. One should not pick up the book and be like, you know what, I'm currently on page 89. That's not the thing, right? It's really a matter of having a Black woman client come in and start to talk about a particular topic. And when we do our own planning for our sessions, and our research for our sessions, we come back to the book and we're like, you know what, that client is mentioning that. Maybe that sounds like what Dr. Plummer wrote in Embracing Newfound Freedom, in the chapter of Embracing Newfound Freedom. Let me go and read that chapter right now. Let me go see what those catalyst questions are. Let me go and see how she worked with her client, because the book has insights from clients on there. So that's how the book is supposed to be read. It's supposed to be a true guidebook. You're experiencing something with one of your Black women clients, you pick up the book, and there are your resources. There are the tips that you can use. Those are the questions. And even the book includes journal prompts that you could give to your client after the session as an extension to their therapeutic process with you. And so going back to your original question, I think, after intake, one of the things that we really need to keep in mind is how we conceptualize our clients. And that really does mean that it has to be beyond that intake again. You know what I mean? And we have to be able to check our own counter transference that may be arising in our biases. And that's not just for non-Black women therapists. Black women need to check it too, right? Like, this book is for all of us, because I may think I may have counter transference around relatability, and I think I over relate to a client. Like, I've experienced that too, girl, right? And I need to check that. So I think beyond intake, we really need to be mindful of how we're conceptualizing our clients. Like I mentioned, I own a practice, a group practice, and we spend a lot of time with conceptualization. In fact, we don't do diagnosing and treatment plan until session 6, because we really need to take time to figure out who these clients are and the fullness of who they are. And when we conceptualize at Onyx, we conceptualize through the 5 primary theoretical orientations. And so we're conceptualizing our clients through cognitive theory, through behavioral theory, through attachment, through humanistic, and through psychodynamic. And from each of those theories, we are able to pull out more information about our clients, so that when we get to treatment planning and diagnosing, we have a full picture of who this client is. And we're not just seeing them through our lenses. We're not just seeing them through our theoretical orientation, our therapeutic modalities. We're seeing them in a broader, more comprehensive perspective. And that really allows for our clients to feel appreciated in sessions. And so we don't really have as much turnover in clients as we've seen, that some of our other colleagues and companies have had.
Yeah. Listen, I didn't take insurance in my counseling practice because I had no idea how to handle it. The process of accepting insurance outside of a group practice can be tough, but most people looking for mental health care want to use their benefits to pay for sessions. If you're like me and you feel a little scared about taking insurance, or you just want to make it easier on yourself, and you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates. They also handle all the paperwork, from eligibility checks to claim submission and guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Plus, when you join Alma, you'll get access to time-saving tools for intake, scheduling, treatment plans, progress notes, and more in their included platform. It's going to make it so much easier for your team, so you can spend less time on administrative work and more time offering great care to your clients. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's helloalma.com/Joe to get started. Well, let's kind of continue that client journey. As a client's looking to successfully discharge from counseling or step down,
Yeah.
Are there particular skills that therapists should be utilizing?
Yeah, well, I think that the decision, and it's funny because I do supervision with my team. Everybody has, 2 to 6 sessions of supervision a month. And we just covered termination, like review termination again. And again, it goes back to, when a client is saying that they're ready to terminate, how are we internalizing that? Because sometimes we we are like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Are they really ready to
Mm.
leave? Or, oh my gosh, I'm gonna miss them so much, because we have created this relationship that can get a little. We shouldn't be dependent on our clients for that kind of joy. But the tips and suggestions are, just making sure that our clients are truly ready to terminate sessions and to be discharged, that we have reviewed their treatment plans with them and shown them where their success is, using measurable goals, right? Smart goals, so we are able to show our clients. And then making sure that they have reviewed all of their skills, right? Their communication skills and their problem solving skills and whatever other skills they needed, and learned throughout their therapeutic process. So I think it's important. I'm going back and forth between Onyx and the book, because I've had Onyx for 13 years now. But in Onyx, our termination process is 4 sessions long. Like, we don't terminate in one session, because we want to go through all of these steps with our clients to make sure that they have everything that they need, that they're processing the potential grief that comes from ending another relationship, even though it's positive, that they're also having the skills that they need in order to feel good, and that they also have replacement behaviors. They've been spending an hour a week with us, right? So what are they going to do with that hour a week now, and what are they going to do throughout other weeks to make sure that they're still prioritizing their mental health, even though they are not in a therapy session once a week?
Mm. So good.
Yeah. Great.
Now, I would love for you to give us a sneak peek even more into the book. Like are there specific pillars of the book, techniques, lessons that stand out? I know we can never capture a full book, a full handbook, but would love for you to just share with us, like, here's 3 to 5 just different things that, if someone just listens to this, that they get some teaching from Dr. Plummer. Obviously, we want people to get the book, but that if even if they just listen to this podcast, it's like, here's some things that really are going to help reshape the way that you do counseling.
Yeah. So the primary thing is to acknowledge and accept that our graduate programs did the best that they could with our multicultural course. I am a department chair at a university in DC. I love the work that I do. I work closely with KCREP, and still know that multicultural counseling it's not even the surface, right? It's not even the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg, right? It's so surface and shallow. So do not feel overly confident and cocky because you took a multicultural class. That's not it, right? Like, be willing to step outside the box and learn a little bit more about the different niches. The other is, we all have biases. It's okay to just acknowledge a bias, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you have to project that bias. It doesn't mean that you have to live within that bias, but be self-aware enough as a therapist. We're asking our clients to increase their self-awareness. We too have to be self-awareness. We have blind spots, right? So be self-aware in understanding that we don't know everything. I wrote this book. It's like 300 pages. Don't let that scare you. Don't let the 300 pages scare you. But it's like,
Well, it's like a choose your own adventure, you said, like you can
read it
go
as
to
you
different
need.
spots.
Read it as you need it. Buy it, read it, and read it as you need it. Um, and I still don't know everything. I lived this therapeutic life for 20 years now, and there were things I was still learning along the way as I was writing the book. So making sure we do that. And then the last thing is to use our resources. Like, as I tell my students all the time, you didn't get that textbook just to get it. Like, open up the textbook, refer back to it, like, use what's in there. One of the things I didn't mention, Joe, is that in the book, I also I write out for each chapter what therapeutic modality is best used for working with that client at that time. So what their therapeutic modality, what clinical focus, how to write a couple SMART goals. I have sample SMART goals in here to make our treatment plan easier. And then what techniques and interventions should we be using as we are working with a client on this particular issue? So again, if a client is coming in and you're addressing trauma with them, you don't need to go and try to recreate the wheel. Pick up the book and see what the therapeutic guide says, because it's here already, right? Like, you could do it. You could just use it. So use our resources. Understand that mental health, our multicultural course, did the best that it could, but it's not comprehensive. That we are humans and we have biases, and that needs to be addressed and acknowledged. and that we have resources to be able to provide the best therapy for our Black women clients, for all of our clients, but specifically today as we're talking for our Black women clients.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you were in charge of, say, K-crap or grad schools, and
Ooh.
you are able to just wave your magic Dr. Plummer wand, and have there be more cultural competence, like what would that look like?
Oh my gosh. I think we would, every course and every assignment would have a cultural component to it. And Joe, that doesn't just mean race and gender, right? Like there's so much of culture that we often overlook. Mass media has taken over the word culture and primarily made it seem like it's race and gender. And of course, the book talks about race and gender, but there's culture related to like social economic status. There's culture related to educational status. There's culture related to regions. What does it mean to be a person from the Midwest versus a person from the East Coast, right? A person from the South. Like, there's culture related to so many things because it's messages that's passed down from one generation to the next. And because we live in an interpersonal environment, we're always getting messages that form our core beliefs, or that amplify our core beliefs. And so I would want there to be culture integrated into more of the uh, more of the classes as a requirement, like the career course. How can we incorporate cultural understanding and teaching our students about how culture plays a role in a person's career selection? And what they think that they're capable of doing or not capable of doing based off of the cultural messages that they've received from their family and communities, but also from larger society. I would incorporate culture in more aspects. Yeah, and the multicultural course, would be taught closer to the beginning of one's time in graduate school as a foundation that continues to get built upon throughout each of the other courses.
Yeah. I mean, I think also, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. To me, as I've had experiences of whether it's travel or going to different events that make me feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
that's like the best way to just have a peek into other people's worlds.
Yeah.
To genuinely like put myself as someone that's in a position of power into spaces that I have no power or
Right.
very little power. And to me, just trying to understand that and then, go back into my world and realize, yeah, I do have a lot more power than I even realized.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important as well.
Joe, that's such an interesting point. I mentioned that again in the book because uh, most people can trace back, or many people can trace back their country of origin. We're not the original Americans, right? Let's just call it what it is. There were people that was here on this land and earth before, on this part of the earth, before we even were here, right? But yet some people can call themselves the majority of a country, right? Like a white American can very much say that I'm a white American, I'm part of the majority, this is my country, etc. And people could do that in vast countries all over the world. Black Americans are going to always be the minority wherever they go. There's a researcher who talked about being an involuntary minority, and that's what Black Americans are. We are involuntary. We didn't choose to be minorities, right? And and there is no place for us to go back to, right? So like I can't say that I am Ghanaian and therefore I go back to Ghana and feel welcomed and appreciated. When I go to Ghana, I'm going to be considered an American, right? And I'm still going to be a minority there because I'm not Ghanaian. And when I'm in the US, although I'm an American, I'm still a minority because I'm Black. You know what I'm saying? And when I go to Asia, I'm a minority because I'm Black and I'm an American. You know what I mean? So there's not a lot of places there's no place that a Black American can go and feel like they are amongst their people, right? Because
Mhm.
that's not a thing for us. Like we're involuntary minorities, and I want more therapists to understand that, because when a Black person comes in, a Black woman comes in, and they're like, I don't, I expect. I experience loneliness, which the World Health Organization has now, made a world issue. but they say I experience loneliness. That means something different for a Black American who doesn't necessarily feel like they have any place in the world where they're just with their people. And then there's also the element, Joe, if we're going to be real specific, right? Uh, that sometimes it's a consequence when you have too many Black people together in one spot, right? It becomes a threat to other people, as we have used this new term like a Karen, right? Like that could be a threat to a person who feels insecure with a large group of Black people gathering together. And that's not new, right? Like that, it's been like that for centuries now. And so, where do I feel safe? I can't be, there's no country that I am with my people. And then when I am with other Black people, that could be a threat to other people. And then it becomes unsafe for us. Like, so of course I feel lonely. Like, where am I not gonna feel lonely, right? And how does that play into my mental health? How does that play into one of the depressive disorders? How does that play into one of the anxiety disorders when I want to be around people, but I don't know if it's safe to be around, you know? Like, the book goes into that, but I want us as counselors to really think about that because we are helping people and we need to help them process and we need to ask the questions that other people are not asking. And the book has those questions in there, but we need to ask those questions to ourselves too, right, Joe? Like, we need to have a moment like you and I are having right now where it's like, dang, that's true, right? Like, wow, dang, yeah, you know, because like you mentioned how we started, you could go to that conference and you could feel uncomfortable, but then you could go back home, right?
Yep. Yep.
But what does home mean for a Black American? You know, like we're likely uncomfortable in most spaces. And even when we are with quote unquote our people, that can also be uncomfortable if it's perceived as a threat.
If every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
You could do this. I want you to know you could do this. You know, I in this conversation, Joe, the book is heavy because it's about real topics and real folks and real people with real implications. But these big old bright red glasses indicate how much of an extrovert I truly am. Um, and I didn't get to show all of that today because we got really academic and deep here. But I truly wrote this book for us because I know that we want to do the best that we can with our clients. I know that there's things we just don't know. And in reading this book, we'll know a little bit more. We won't know it all, but we'll know a little bit more. And you could do this work. That's what I want to say to all private practice owners, all clinicians that are working in practice. This we Black women, we need more therapists that see us. We need more therapists that appreciate us. And I wrote this book because you can do it. We need help from you, and you can do it. Yeah. And then for private practice owners, like let's think about how we set up our practices to be more inclusive of all clients. How do we frame our intakes? How do we go through case conceptualization? What kind of pressure do we put on our clinicians that may be unfair and subsequently don't allow them to see their clients in the full and robust nature of who they are? Because we are, you know, trying to make sure that we get all the insurance payments in, you know, like receive all of our insurance. Like, how do we create a practice that makes a Black woman client or any client that's marginalized feel extra safe, even if it's for just an hour a week?
Dr. Plummer, if people want to get your book, if they want to follow your work, where should we send them?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the book is everywhere. I am so grateful for that too. It is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Walmart and all these independent bookstores. And right now it is tracking #1 in new releases. So I am so grateful for all of our clinicians who are buying the book and they're already seeing value in it, especially as it's being released officially today, right? So that's tracking #1 through all of our pre-sales. But the book could be found anywhere. For me, I could be found everywhere too. I'm like everywhere. But
Omnipresent.
I'm omnipresent, right? But on socials, I am Dr. LaNail, R. Plummer. And on Instagram, I'm Mahogany Sunshine because I'm so shiny, right? I'm so bright with the sun. And Onyx is found everywhere too. Just simply put in Onyx. And so we have a podcast and we have YouTube, and I do blogs for Psychology Today every month, and I do videos for Good Therapy. Like, this work really matters and means so much to me. So somebody could simply put in my name in their search engine and they'll see the articles that I've written or contributed to and the work that I get to do. And I still see clients. And so if you have folks that are interested, then there's that. And I do supervision too. I know. How do I do it all, Joe? I don't know. I drink lots of water.
Good. Stay hydrated. Well, we'll have links to all those things in the show notes as well if you're out running or driving right now. Thank you, Dr. Plummer, for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Oh, I'm so grateful, Joe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Whenever I do episodes like this, where I'm really digging into specialties, it really reminds me of episode 1323 that came out about a month ago, but literally yesterday, it was when I interviewed Dr. Britt Ray. She was talking about becoming a climate-aware therapist and about the anxiety of our climate and all that's happening. And it's interesting to get to interview so many different people because it often starts with, similar to what Dr. Plummer said, is that grad school was the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. Same sort of thing, with climate change discussions, that we just weren't prepared. We have to dig into these areas. And then kind of that next phase of saying that there's nuance and there's also generalities. And we need to look at what the experts, like Dr. Plummer, are teaching us. And then, showing up for that client in front of you, having your own biases, whether that's around the climate change or counseling Black women or all the other topics that we cover on this show. To me, it's interesting when I hear all these professionals kind of saying a similar model, but applying it in different areas. When I see that, doing now 1,300 podcasts, it makes me say, okay, well, there's something there. That what we learned in grad school wasn't nearly enough, and yet we're still called professionals. Only 8% of the U.S. has even a master's degree. So in most rooms of 100 people, we are the mental health leader the day we graduate from grad school. And then we need to dig into these areas even deeper to be these influencers, these writers, these podcasters, these therapists for people. So I want to encourage you to continue to explore, continue to join us this year as we have deeper and deeper issues. Also, if you haven't been following, I'm starting from scratch a brand new group practice. Started that just about 6 weeks ago, doing that publicly. So every week I'm going to be talking about where I spent my 2 hours a week that I've given myself to work on starting a group practice from scratch. So if you want to follow that journey, make sure you do that through the podcast as well. Thank you so much to Alma for being our sponsor today. I wish Alma had been around when I had my private practice. I had no idea what I was doing. That's why I didn't take insurance. But if Alma had been there, I would have. And there's no reason that as a clinician, you should be spending hours on paperwork to bill for insurance, or not knowing for sure that you'll get reimbursed for sessions with your clients. If you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, but don't want to navigate the process and paperwork on your own, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates and a guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to get started. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have an amazing day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.